I remember being so overwhelmed by SEO and having no idea what it meant. I knew I needed it because it was like, ooh, get to the top of Google. Great, I want to do that. But what does it mean? And honestly, I think the biggest and simplest way to rank for SEO is local SEO, which is through your Google profile. That's always like my biggest piece of advice, because then they click on your website through your Google profile, and that's going to get you ranking.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 374 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and glad you joined us. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, glad you found us and glad you're listening in, and hope you'll take time to follow us or subscribe to us wherever you might be listening to us. And if you're coming back for more, glad you're part of this community, part of this journey, and hope you'll continue to be part of this with us. I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest on this particular episode, Jessica Harris. And Jessica has a great story in just how she went from really struggling as a single mom to building a thriving group practice and then eventually selling it. And so looking forward to you hearing her story and how she was able to do that. And in this particular episode, we do talk a lot about how she was able to kind of leverage using Google business profile and also social media to build her practice. And so I think you'll find it interesting. So I'm looking forward to you hearing my conversation with Jessica. Before we get to that, though, I'd love for you to check out my friend Ashley's online store. And this particular month, the month of March, we're doing what we're calling a March Madness promotion. And through that promotion, we are really spotlighting Hope Unite. And if you'll go back to episode number 357, you can hear my conversation with Crystal Adams Scott, who is the founder of Hope Unite International. And you can learn more about that organization in that particular episode. But it's an organization that is focused on helping people become much more aware of suicide prevention and how it affected her life when she lost her husband to suicide. But anyway, through that organization, or with that organization, we are going to donate $5 from every shirt sold at mentalhealthwear.com. And in particular, we've created, or Ashley has created, a specific collection specifically for therapists and social workers and counselors. And if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/hopeunite, you can find that particular collection. And again, if you purchase a shirt from there, we'll donate $5 from every shirt sold to Hope Unite. So it's a way of us kind of giving back in the community and making people more aware of mental health in general, mental wellness, and also addiction recovery and that sort of thing. So be sure and check it out, practiceoftherapy.com/hopeunite. And also, before we get to my conversation with Jessica, I'd love for you to hear more about TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers, and they're a sponsor of this podcast, along with one of the members from the SiteCraft Network, of which this podcast is a member.
Hi, I'm Whitney Owens. If you don't know me, I am the person behind the Wise Practice podcast, which is part of the SiteCraft network of podcasts. I am so proud to be a part of this network, along with my good friend Gordon Brewer, who's doing such amazing work on helping people on their practice journey. If you haven't discovered the Wise Practice podcast yet, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'd love for you to join us as we explore how to grow a faith-based practice that brings you the income you need and the lifestyle you want. Be sure to check out the podcast and other helpful information at whitneyowens.com.
Ready to upgrade your practice from a rusty bicycle to a shiny new sports car? Buckle up, because TherapyNotes is here to turbocharge your journey. It's the comprehensive practice management system you've been craving. Equipped with everything you need to navigate patient records, schedule seamlessly, host remote sessions, craft detailed notes, and tackle insurance billing with ease. And guess what? It's your trusty sidekick, available whenever and wherever duty calls. Picture having more quality time with your clients, all thanks to this digital assistant that never clocks out. Here's the kicker. It's Gordon approved, so you can trust it's the real deal. Bid farewell to paperwork headaches and embrace a new era of efficiency and top-tier care. Ready to level up your private practice game? Swing by practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and punch in promo code GORDON for 2 months on the house. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so glad for you to get to know today Jessica Harris. Welcome, Jessica. Glad you're here.
Hi. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And so Jessica has got an interesting story, and I'm looking forward to folks hearing it. But Jessica, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yeah. So I am Jessica. I'm very happy to be here today, and I am from Utah, and I'm an LCSW, and I grew my private pay practice a few years ago, and I was very excited to be able to start my own practice. I decided to make it cash pay only just because I'm also a single mom, so I really wanted to maximize the time with my daughter and be able to, make more money, because I grew up with not this crazy amount of money. And so I was excited to be able to have my own business, make a good amount of money, help a lot of clients. So I decided to be cash pay. And then I did a ton of marketing, a ton of research to have the most successful practice and have it take off as quickly as possible. So I filled myself with clients in 4 months, so 15 to 18 cash pay full fee clients a week. I decided to then grow to a group practice where I hired over the course of the next year 6 other therapists, all private pay. It was really exciting to watch it grow, watch it flourish. And during that time, I had a lot of people reaching out, like, how are you getting cash pay clients? How are they coming to you so consistently? Like, what's the secret? And so then I decided to start a coaching business at the same time, turn it into a 12-week coaching program, and that really took off. And that ended up being really where my passion has lied. I never knew I was a business person, a marketing person. I remember when I started my practice, I was like, I don't know anything about business, but we'll figure it out. And then now it's like my biggest passion. And so I was growing both the coaching business and the therapy practice side by side, and being a single mom and trying to, maintain my own mental health and physical health and social life and dating life and all of the things. So I did eventually decide to sell my practice last June, just so I could have a little bit more of a breather. And now I just coach therapists now in my 12-week program. So that's kind of a brief recap of my story, but it's been a very exciting journey and very unexpected for sure.
Wow. That's amazing. So I'm thinking that probably a question that most people would have is, what was your marketing strategy and how did you grow so quickly?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Essentially, I made sure to be found on Google. I think there's a lot of people that I saw like growing on social media and networking and cold calling doctors' offices and that kind of stuff. And for me, I was like thinking to myself, like, okay, what about the couple times I reached out to a therapist in the past? I Googled them. Or I think about how I find other types of businesses. I Googled them, and a lot of times if someone has a good website or their Google profile, if they had a good amount of reviews, which obviously as therapists, I only ever recommend colleague reviews. I know we can't ask clients for reviews, but things like that, I was really putting myself in the mind of clients, Psychology Today, all of the things, and really standing out above the rest. And so there's a huge piece of like getting found on Google and doing everything in my power to get people to find my website, to get people to find my therapist directories. I did a lot of Google searches as a client in my area, like just searching therapist near me, couples counselor, anxiety therapist, EMDR therapist, all that stuff to see what came up on Google and making sure I was on those things too. And then I think the next biggest thing that I really focused on is like, okay, how do I now have a good website? How do I have good design? How do I actually speak to my clients? Where I saw so many people on their Psychology Today or websites being like, I'm passionate about this and I love this and I love this modality and I do this. And I'm like, that doesn't really resonate with someone who is in the depths of their own sorrows. They care more about their pain and how to get out of that pain. And so I kind of teach people like the biggest things are getting as many people as possible to find you, which, through Google. And then when they do find you, to feel like, okay, this is it. This is the therapist I want to work with. So you're actually converting them. And then also making sure you're getting the right clients to find you. Because maybe a lot of people find you on social media, but they're not in your state. They're not necessarily looking for a therapist, which is where Google comes in. And then I guess the last piece of that too is making the consultation and follow-up process very easy and very simple. Very quick follow-up. The amount of people who are like, oh, you're the first person to finally reach out, or wow, you reached out so quickly. Making it really easy on the website, making a phone call really easy versus emailing back and forth for days on end. And really speaking my value on the consult call, especially cash pay only, where it was not salesy. If they needed to use their insurance, I referred them out. There's no pressure ever, but really speaking my value and being really confident in my fee. So that's kind of a recap of essentially how I filled my practice.
Yeah, yeah. And what you're speaking about are really, what I've learned over the years is kind of the basics of marketing to some degree. And I think it's one of the things I'm curious about is what do you think is the key to appealing to potential clients? I mean, as far as what you're writing, the message you're getting out there, what is it do you think helps with that?
Yeah, I mean, I always go down to like the very basics of, like when clients fill out an intake form, for instance, and it's like, what made you come to therapy? What did they write in there? What did they write in the intake form? Your first session with them, what are they saying of why they're coming to therapy? Or your phone call with them. Hey, what is, causing you to reach out for therapy today? That language is exactly the type of language to put on your website, to put on your Psychology Today, to put on your Google profile, because you're using the exact same language that they're telling you. And obviously, if you've got 10 different clients you're summarizing and you're really picking a niche, and I guess that's the first and foremost thing, niching down a little bit where you're not talking about 10 different things, because then you don't sound like an expert. And I don't think it has to be like, okay, you're only, honed in on one type of client, because some people get so caught up in like, okay, it has to be teens, there has to be millennials, it has to be anxiety only, I can't talk about anything else. Like you can talk about some things with overlap, but then once you have that niche, like really using their exact language and speaking to that. And so I think that's a huge thing in appealing in your messaging, not really talking much about modalities, with the exception of EMDR or the exception of a couple other things. And not that you can't put that out there. Some people are looking for a DBT therapist or a CBT therapist or somatic work or whatever. You can sprinkle that in, but a lot of people don't know, or even people that do know, even me as a therapist who knows what that is, if I needed therapy today, I wouldn't be like, it for sure needs to be CBT. I care more about the pain that I'm dealing with. And so putting that out there, keeping the solutions out there too in very simple language. And I think that's the other thing, like being really simple with it. And also making things like visually appealing where it's simple. A lot of people on their websites have really long paragraphs where you get lost and you're like, I don't even want to read this. And so like making sure that the web, like the design looks good and all of that. And it's tricky because especially if they're finding you on your website, and even let's say they find you through Psychology Today, or they find you from a referral from a colleague, or they find you somewhere else, often it leads back to your website. And as therapists, we're not web designers, but people who have a beautifully designed website, or at least a simply designed, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, you're automatically subconsciously going to assume that that person does better at whatever service that they're offering. And so I think that's a good, key as well. And maybe that's a little bit off of what you were talking about with the messaging, but I also think like the design, a headshot, having a really good headshot where it doesn't matter what you look like, but are you welcoming? Are you inviting? Is it blurry and look like a selfie, or does it look a little bit more professional, even if you did it from an iPhone? And so just thinking about all the little things that people are looking for and really making sure that that process is very clear to them. Because you essentially, especially if they're cash pay, if they're insurance, if they're using their insurance, they're just looking up like someone that takes Blue Cross. Great, found one, great. They mention anxiety somewhere in there, perfect. But if they're looking in the lens of like, I need someone who can really help me with this overwhelming anxiety I'm feeling, you want them to land on your website and be like, whoa, I've said that exact same thing to myself. Like they're in my head. This is the exact type of therapist I want to work with.
Right, right. Yeah, that's such great advice with all of that, because I think it's as you mentioned earlier, niching down is really the key to helping stand out, because people are looking. I think when people go and look for stuff, they're looking for help with a specific problem, and so the more that you can, like you said, kind of get in their head and let them know that you understand what it's like for them, that's going to be more appealing to them. You
Yeah.
mentioned, Jessica, really working on getting your ranking in Google up. And I guess that gets into the area of SEO. And so, what have you learned about that? And what is it that you would say are some keys around that help you get your ranking up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know that's like the $1 million question where SEO is so confusing. I remember being so overwhelmed by SEO and having no idea what it meant. I knew I needed it because it was like, ooh, get to the top of Google. Great, I want to do that. But what does it mean? And honestly, I think the biggest and simplest way to rank for SEO is local SEO, which is through your Google profile. That's always like my biggest piece of advice, because then they click on your website through your Google profile, and that's going to get you ranking. And if you're virtual only, using a virtual address or something like that, but really optimizing that, because for anyone listening to this, if you are Googling therapist near me, couples counselor near me, whatever you're Googling, besides a couple ads, the very next thing that pops up is the big thing of Google profiles, Google business profiles, and then websites through like the SEO pops up as well. And so
Mhm.
for me, it's like you might as well really optimize that through getting reviews from colleagues, since obviously we can't ask for them from clients. That's going to help boost you, having some good photos in there, adding to your description, updating posts. All of those things are going to be huge and a much quicker way to rank than the organic SEO. So I would always recommend local SEO first. But then outside of that, just to get your website to rank outside of a Google business profile, I would say some of the biggest and easiest things are some of the on-page SEO tactics, where figuring out what keywords are people searching for. And some people get overwhelmed with that, but it's really just thinking about whatever your niche is and like a word that the client's searching for, using the word therapy or counseling, which a little bit more people search therapy than counseling, and then adding the city and state you're in. And even if you're virtual only and you're like, oh, but I'm trying to rank for the whole state of California because I want to help clients everywhere, it's going to be way easier to rank in a city than it is an entire state. And so what that could look like is couples counseling or couples therapy in, San Francisco, California, or whatever. And that could be your keyword. And so putting that in different headers and H1 headers, if you don't know what that is, in your website builder, H1 headers are like the main topic of the page. I would always put keywords in the headings, especially the H1 header, and then some of the other headers. And so that's a huge thing, is just using those keywords. Another huge thing for SEO is just making sure there's enough words on each page. And so sometimes you'll only have 200 words a page, when in reality, you want to get closer to a minimum 500, closer to 750 or 1,000 words a page. you also want to be updating it regularly to show Google, like, hey, this person is active on their website versus this person hasn't updated their stuff in 2 years. They like Google wants to show the best possible websites on the best possible topics for what people are searching for. And so if you're
Mhm.
actively updating stuff, that's going to be another great thing for SEO. And we can go into like there's so many different technical things to SEO, but I think one of the most like undervalued things for SEO is simply just making it appealing enough to where people want to stay on for longer. Because
Mhm.
there's a bounce rate. If people instantly get on your website and instantly bounce out, Google's like, why is everyone like instantly getting out of this? Versus people are staying longer and converting, that's also more likely to help you get to the top of Google. And so you could get lost in all the technical stuff. And, I know we're not necessarily going to dive into all the confusing technical details. Um, but I would say a huge thing is if you can just make it visually appealing, use that client language we were talking about, do things there to make it so that people actually want to stay on your page. That's another huge way to rank for SEO.
Right, right. And I think, yeah, one of the things I know that helped me early on is just looking at when you go to Google something for when you're thinking about Googling a therapist, looking at those websites that come up first on the list and just
Yeah.
looking at them and getting an idea about what is there that is appealing to Google and then being able to not copy that, but kind of emulate that same kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge thing I did too. And a lot of times it was like, oh yeah, they're using these keywords. This must be important. Or wow, look at this content they have, or different things is really valuable. And every once in a while, because Google like, also values like longevity. And so if someone's had a website for 10 years, way easier to rank than if you've had your website for 1 month because they want to make sure it's
Mhm.
actually good. And so every once in a while, people will be like, well, this website isn't even that good. Why are they at the top? Well, they might have just been around for a really long time, but they're also
Uh-huh.
obviously implementing some good strategies. And so using a little bit of both of that and being patient with SEO. SEO
Yeah.
is not an instant thing. It's going to take more time. That's where I always tell people do your Google business profile, do therapist directories and that kind of stuff, especially the first month or two when you're
Hmm.
really trying to get clients and the SEO will start to kick in.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Well, Jessica, tell folks a little bit about if they're interested in working with you, how they would get in touch, and also just kind of your process with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have tons of free trainings and some free guides in my free Facebook group, the Therapist Private Pay Accelerator. You can find me on there, go to the guide section, watch all the free trainings. You can also find me on Instagram at Empowering Therapists or my website, empoweringtherapy.com. And if you want to get in touch with me and work with me, I have a 12-week program specifically designed to help people get cash pay clients and fill up their practice. It's basically all the things I wish I would have known when I was starting my practice that would have saved me so much time and so much wasted money. And it's a great, great program. There's so many different client success coaches in the recorded course and so much support. And we always do free consults first to make sure it's a good fit. So you can book a call with me on my website, empoweringtherapist.com, see if it's a good fit to work with me, or you can just join my free trainings in my Facebook group.
Yes, yes. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary for people to find that easily. Well, Jessica, what are some maybe parting thoughts you might have for folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly think that the biggest thing is just knowing it's possible. There's so much negativity and scarcity and fear just in general out there, but especially like certain Facebook groups for therapists or just different friends and colleagues that are like, the economy, I don't know if it's possible. There's a lot going on in the world. Yes, all of that's true. Yes, tons of people are really struggling. And there's still people willing to pay out of pocket for a good therapist. And if anything, people need therapy more than ever. And so just knowing that it's possible, that you're able to do it, that you're not trying to get everyone to work with you, you just need a small handful of people. So I think knowing that it's possible and knowing that everyone has a different timeline. And so not comparing yourself. If you're trying to grow a six-figure practice, which, by the way, if you charge 150 an hour and see 15 clients a week, that's a six-figure practice if you're
Mhm.
consistent with that. but that's not going to come instantly. And so I think sometimes people too assume like, it's going to happen instantly. And for some people, it happens faster than others, but it's usually the bigger the reward, like it's going to take a little bit more time. So just being patient with it and appreciating every new client that comes in the meantime.
Yeah. Yeah. The value of being, as I like to say, persistent and consistent with things pays off in the long run. Yeah, sure. Well, Jessica, I'm so glad you joined us, and hopefully we'll have another conversation here soon. Well, a big thanks to Jessica for joining me on the podcast, and I hope you found her story inspirational. I know for me, just hearing people's successes in private practice and how they morph into other things, but particularly consulting and coaching, and just a lot of how our skill set can translate into a lot of different other areas. And hopefully you learned a little bit more about SEO and using Google and also social media to kind of promote your practice. And at least I did. I got some good inspiration from Jessica and just listening to her story. Also, big thanks to TherapyNotes for being a sponsor of this podcast. They are a leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and I absolutely just love that platform. And my team does too. We use it, of course, every single day, and they are constantly upgrading and doing things to improve the platform. So be sure and check it out by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And if you'll use the promo code Gordon, just Gordon, you can try them out for 2 months for free. So be sure and check them out. Therapy Notes and Practice of Therapy. We've teamed up for several years now, and I'm so grateful to them for sponsoring this podcast. And also, before we go, I'd love for you to check out the mental health wear collection for therapists. And again, if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/hopeunite, and then $5 from each shirt that is sold, got a tongue twister there. You will donate $5 to Hope Unite. And so help us out in supporting them, and also find out about some great designs, particularly if you're a counselor, therapist, or social worker, or anybody in our general mental wellness, mental health profession. So check it out. And I hope you will take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And thanks again for joining me in this journey. And we've got lots of great guests lined up for future episodes. And I'm going to keep at it. I mean, this is episode 374, and it's hard to believe I've been doing it since 2017, but going to keep at it. And thank you for being part of this with me. Take care, folks. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.